They were streaming it, because they're like, this seat.
Oh, yeah, Ben made a big deal about the seat.
Yeah, yeah.
She couldn't.
Shouldn't just be a problem.
We ready? All right. I now call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for December 13th, 2021. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member McLeister? Here. Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member Waring?
Here.
Member Shroya?
Here.
Member Revolt? Here. Member Matheny? Here. Member Orr? Here. 7 present.
All right, first up is the Ordinance and Rules Committee. Chairman Orr.
Okay, we've got a couple things here. 3A, you want to go ahead and read those?
Just want me to give an overview of 3A? So, as most of you are probably aware, we have a Records and Archives Commission here in the city, which is responsible for annually reviewing what public records we're going to shred and keep and things like that. Initially, I had intended to replace the president of council with myself, since I'm the one who maintains most of council's records. And in double checking with the Ohio Revised Code, I found that the president of council isn't supposed to be on the Records Archives Commission anyway. So this just takes the president of council off the Records and Archives Commission.
Okay, I can make a motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. John, you want to go with 3B?
3B is the adult cabaret business, Codified Ordinances, the City of North Canton updated definition of adult cabaret. We did not have any wording of what an adult cabaret was in the current charter, I believe.
We had wording, but it was clearly written before the internet existed.
So, if you want to change that, and I'm all for it. Makes good sense.
I think this is, Chairman Orr, this is, and for the newer members of council, at various times, and I would defer to the administration, the city has taken steps to prohibit certain types of adult activity in the community. And this is consistent with those steps or those actions. Basically, they exist to prevent an adult entertainment facility from being located on Main Street. Patrick?
Yeah, I think this was something that came to Marty's attention when we've been working on some economic development activities, and there's been some interest from entities like this that were thinking of locating on what they thought was in North Canton on Cleveland Avenue. Of course, we all know Cleveland Avenue, north or south, is either Canton or Plain. So this was in Plain, on the northern outside of town, that they thought that they were in the city of North Canton because it has a North Canton, Ohio mailing address. So they make inquiry to our building and zoning department regarding regulations, and we tell them that they've got the wrong number. They need to call Plain Township. But it got us to then look at our code, and it hadn't been updated, as Ben said, to reflect the internet age. And so this is just that effort to bring that up to more current standard, consistent with what this community expects.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And the last one is, it's a violation and abatement of the code ordinance of the city of North Canton. With the weeds and vegetation, we have rules on how high they can be, but how long it is to correct. Currently it's 30 days, and that's kind of a long time because that goes up. So on the new wording, was it 2 days?
effectively 2 days, so we'd end up with two different types of notices, is what's proposed is, in April, administration would post advertisement essentially in the newspaper to reach the community and remind them that, there is an expectation to maintain your property and your yards. And if by chance they miss that notice or get busy, code enforcement will stop by and give them the notice, and that would give them 2 days before abatement would occur.
Something that's needed, so I would go ahead and move forward in this.
I have a question for you. If you take a look at 173901E, we're talking about publishing notice in a newspaper. Do we want to use the word newspaper, or do we want to use the word a publication of general circulation? Because we're moving away from newspapers.
Right.
A. B is, maybe we'd be better in the water bill or in that little North Canton,
Yeah.
not our town, but the one that gets mailed,
That's what I was thinking.
And maybe we ought to just buy some space there and publish notice. I don't know, but I'm not sure we want to do it in the newspaper, say in the newspaper.
What else did we already take out of the newspaper? There's something else we already said we're not even doing.
Posting of jobs.
Yeah.
We're just not doing it.
No.
There could be a statutory requirement, though, on this, that it be in a newspaper. So we would want to make sure that we don't
Okay.
eliminate our
Right. No.
first notice requirement, which would completely throw us out of the loop.
Let's do this then. I'll make you've moved, or I'll make a motion, we place this on the agenda, if there's a second.
I'll second.
With the caveat that we reserve the right to amend this next week after Ben checks the language, see whether it's a newspaper or we can use some other publications.
The only thing I would do is in checking these other publications, our town was published once a month. A couple of these others are published once a month, and they're back where they're at in 30 days. Or at least the newspaper,
Well, I think the point is
the
this year,
newspaper we go to.
we want to alert people that this is out here, correct? That's the purpose of the publication. So if you run it once, theoretically, it's all you have to do in the spring.
But it is date specific, that it's April 1st.
Okay, well, then you would do it.
So, the Our Town doesn't come out on April 1st. And other things don't come out on April 1st, whereas with the newspaper, we can control that.
So theoretically, you could stick it out in March. Maybe you want to change the language. If you have authority under the code.
Well, with all due respect, I think we're tripping over dollars to pick up dimes. It's a one-time advertisement in the paper, Darrell, on April 1st, and then it clears the deck for everything.
Well, I would just say this. This is an old thing. I don't think the repository is an especially effective tool for notifying people. It's just simply not. So the question is, what lands in the revolt mailbox once a month with great regularity? A water bill and that North Canton neighbor, whatever it's called.
I could have said anything.
Yeah. So, I don't care, to Pat's point, do whatever, but if you really want to get the word out, I think you got to put it in people's hands.
Well, we're not disagreeing that we shouldn't get the word out in multiple forms, and we don't feel that over the years that we've done an effective job of that. But from the standpoint of legal notice and compliance and getting something that it gets appealed to a court, the notice under the statute to be in the general newspaper on April 1st, as opposed to in a water bill, and I don't even pay my water bill. I'm a renter, et cetera, and so on. It's just, there's legal notification requirements that set us up for when we go to then hit them with the 2-day notice, and then we're going to abate it and lien their property.
Well, again,
So
the motion included the caveat that we would check the statute. And if the statute says this is what you have to have, it's what you have to have.
We have a second.
Yep, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Street and Alley Committee, that's me for 4A. This was, okay, this is the release of the bond in the sanctuary phase 4. Rob, can you go over that with us? And specifically, what are the requirements for release? Are they specific, or is it just, they did the cleanup and it looks good? Is it?
Yeah, basically, 2 years ago, we put on concept of a performance bond in the amount of the improvement to build phase 4 of the subdivision. And then once that's constructed, basically a year goes by, we reduce that to just 10% in the form of a maintenance bond. We hold that for 1 year, and then the owner developer came to us and said, hey, our year is up, and we're done with our roads, would you consider releasing the bond? So we went out and looked up and down, street department pulled lids, looked inside the manholes. We looked at the pavement, there was one little piece of curb and gutter that was broken. Put it on a punch list, they fixed it like 3 days later. So they're asking just for the release of that bond, the amounts in 60,000 or something, 10% of the original.
I believe that's right.
$61,113.
Yeah, and they've withheld, or they've upheld everything they said they do. They've maintained it for a year. Now they're turning it over to us. It's in good shape inside now.
Okay, thank you.
Recommend that we go ahead and release that bond back to the developer.
Thanks. Any other comments on that? I motion to move that to the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 4B. Okay, so this was to establish separate processes for minor and major street excavations. We had a gentleman come in and make a pretty good presentation to us, had handouts for us and everything, and he had a very minor driveway, I believe a driveway entrance, and his bond was held for a while, and we kind of, I think we put it on the agenda and then we removed it. Administration care to comment on?
Yeah, this is something that we've been kicking around since that time, and there was really no point of bringing it back to the old council. So Rob, myself, Marty, and I think to some extent Ben have been working on this. And so Marty, you want to run point on this one, on basically where we ended up at?
Absolutely. So proposed is replacing the street opening permit with 2 different types of right-of-way permits. We have the minor right-of-way permit and the major right-of-way permit. The minor right-of-way permit, one thing to note there is that does not require that bond. This is addressing the concern previously. The minor right-of-way permit, we also maintain the same fee, the $100 flat rate, as we did with the street opening permit, so no change in fee. And where the minor right-of-way permit applies is when it's outside the roadway and it's contained within a single property. So this would be your homeowner doing, maybe replacing a sewer lateral, water lateral replacement, perhaps a sidewalk repair of some sort. This would be that minor right-of-way permit. The major right-of-way permit is, the fee on that is an actual cost basis, and there is a deposit with that as well as a bond. The major right-of-way permit is when it is or may be located in the right-of-way, or it also could take place on multiple properties. So this might be a public utility hiring a contractor to upgrade those public utilities, and it goes across, the frontage of multiple properties. So that's where it could be out of the right-of-way, but encumbers or encroaches on several properties. Or, in the right-of-way, could be a new sewer tap, new water tap, could, something that takes place in the roadway. Typically, those types of permits are much more labor-intensive, particularly the utility work. There's a lot more inspection required, a lot of follow-up on the phone. Even leading up to those right-of-way permits, there's a significant amount of plan review that takes place, coordination. Generally, there's some type of pre-construction meeting. And so this structure would be an actual cost essentially. So whatever time the city has into that permit, the applicant would pay that. And the last thing to note on this, it does also authorize a stop work order. So if someone is doing work in the right of way, we have the legal authority to place a stop work.
Question. So am I clear that if it's a minor on an individual's property, there's no deposit, there's no bond, there's simply the permit?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so no deposit that will need to be returned by the city?
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I motion to move this to the agenda.
Both seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, finally, the Community and Economic Development Chair, Mr. Roll.
Thank you very much. The first item is the proposed amendment reducing the height of a swimming pool fence from 5 feet to 4. This has gone to the Planning Commission. You've heard testimony from former member Soretta regarding this. I think we all understand that the reason driving this amendment is 5 feet is a non-standard height.
Right.
Now, the Planning Commission, if you go down and look at Section 1D, the Planning Commission recommended that we strip out items 2 and 4. That we eliminate the living fence. You're going to have a fence, and it will be a fence, A. And then B is that the height of the fence is the height of the fence. It's 4 feet. Correct?
That's correct.
Really simple. So what we've got here is our action tonight would be to determine whether we want to approve the additional amendments, striking 2 and 4,
Actually, we need to reschedule the public hearing.
and then we need to reschedule a public hearing. But I think we ought to have the correct language for that public hearing. Correct?
Previously, you had said you wanted to have a public hearing before acting on the proposed amendments, but
Well, I think
It
we're
is
in
your
the point
choice,
where we
Chairman.
can- we're drafting tonight. So, Mr. McLeaster, do you have anything to
No, sir, no, nothing to add.
counsel?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Any type of materials accepted for the fence?
Well,
So it could be a snow fence?
no, it's consistent with what's required in the zoning.
Correct. There is some prohibition for fences in the front yard, for example, chain link fence, obviously. Well, maybe it's not obvious. In the zoning code, it does prohibit swimming pools in the front yard, so they would have to be located in the rear yard. The rear yard does have construction standards for fences located in whether a corner side lot or an interior lot. There are construction standards for the fence in the zoning.
John, at the planning commission meeting, Marty spoke eloquently on that very subject, recommending that you allow barbed wire. Just schools and barbed wire. Thought it set a nice urban tone. All right, well, I guess council, what's your pleasure? I mean, we can just go ahead and take this as proposed, set the meeting for the 24th.
Yep.
And then we'll strike those, make note that we'll strike those after the public hearing. Fair enough? I guess if that's council's pleasure, we can consider it.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Let's set the public hearing for January 24th.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. We are going to move on to item B. And this is a technical correction to our codified ordinance. We want to remove the chart of districts in our zoning ordinance. We believe that this is problematic where it is. And Marty, do you want to speak to this? I think that the reason we want this, we don't have to come back if we forget to have to change it, correct? that the rationale? I read the document.
Essentially, each of the zoning districts are covered in each of the respective chapters. Really isn't a need for a chart such as this.
So this just eliminates potential conflict.
Correct. And we do, if there is, somebody does see the value in a chart.
Marty, can you speak up, please?
Yeah. Oh, we don't have speakers. Yeah, each of the zoning districts are listed on the zoning map. So, they really don't need to be listed in the zoning code in addition to the zoning map. So if someone did want to see a list of each of the districts, the zoning map would be a more appropriate place to locate those.
Mr. Policer,
No, sir, nothing.
any questions from council?
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. Revolt will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Let's move on to item 5C. We have in your packets a complete rewrite of Title V. As you will note, there are 3 significant changes that have occurred in this rewrite. The first is the notification requirements, going to our website, and to notify all adjacent property owners. Yep.
Correct.
So that way, any potential impacted property owner matter will receive a written notification. They don't have to worry about reading it over the key. The second is that the language of this rewrite splits off appeals and variances. That offers greater simplicity and clarity, I think. So that should help. And then the third is, as your notes say, this is probably the most significant, is that what we're basically going to do is a project that meets the requirements of the zoning code does not have to go to the planning commission. It can be approved by our development department. Remember, we established that in the last council. Director of Administration heads that, supported by Marty and his group. Permits, inspections, etc. And the whole idea is that this will expedite the process for building. It does not mean that inspections won't occur, or, as we were marking before the meeting began, that the all-important occupancy permit will be automatically granted. The administration has a tremendous role, but when you think about projects in northern Ohio, if you've got the scheduled planning commission to just simply rubber stamp something that's good, you might lose at least an entire month. And that's assuming that you can get a quorum. Not that we couldn't, but if you don't get a quorum, then it pushes that project out that much further. So you might be out 6 weeks or another 8 from the time they come in. And again, this speaks to the Director of Administration's approach, is that he wants those projects to come to his office first for discussion and review. And I think it's prominently mentioned, in the language, but this is the process. And the idea is to identify all the friction points and get them addressed before that project goes. Mr. Diorio?
Yes, this kind of embodies what the administration has been doing the last few years. Is we want projects to come to us while they're still in the planning stages. Show us what it is that you want to do in explicit detail. We bring in Marty's team, Rob's team, my team, fire department, storm sewer, planning commission, when Jamie was chair of planning, we all got together and we looked this stuff over. And it's like, well, we want to do this. Well, yeah, if you do that, then that's not specifically within the zoning. So you're going to have to go to the planning commission and get a change, or you're going to have to go to zoning commission to get a variance or whatever. Or, here's an idea, you could just change it so that it conforms. And then you don't have to go see anybody. And that's the intent. And what we have found is that these builders, these developers love this approach and wish that it could be emulated in other communities.
So again, if you look back over the last 24 months, our objective is to facilitate the redevelopment of Main Street. That's why we have our new second century zoning. So the next phase of this is to actually get people to redevelop parts of Main Street. And it's this approach that helps set us apart as a business-friendly location for capital investment, which is what we want. We don't want people hung up in an approval process if we can get it done right in this meeting. Made a couple notes. As I look at this, and you'll probably hear me say this later on as we consider some other things not in this committee. But I think there's some guiding principles that certainly Patrick and I share, and that is that we want efficiency and we want clarity. So does that box get checked? And the answer is yes, it does. This is more efficient and it's clearly written. The second is, do we want to make sure that it's transparent? And the answer is yes. We have all the notifications, we have the public hearings, all that stuff is there. All right? And finally, we want accountability. Somebody's going to sign off on this, and frankly, there will be an occupancy permit. Now, what makes this all work is the fact that we have a crack professional team running things. I'm not sure that we could do this under other circumstances. I'll just be kind and let it go at that. But we've got a rare opportunity here to set something in play because we're fortunate to have the system that we have with the players in place. And I think, frankly, we ought to try it. That, Mr. Story, is my monologue for this.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion, we stick it on the agenda.
Any further comments or
I'll
questions?
second that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Okay,
carries.
thank you. We've got items 5D and 5E. If you'll note, these pertain to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The original Chapter 145 and Chapter 147 will need probably motions for both of these. But if you look at 145 and 147, the part that is in the original text is actually 145.02 and 147.02. That's recording meetings and content of minutes. All right? That's there. What has happened is that we've gone back and they've added a new 145.01 organization, the establishment, a quorum, rules, and meeting requirements. So those appear for both. That's the new part. Marty, Ben?
To clarify use of the word new, all of the provisions in the new section 1 were previously in Title 5 of the zoning code. So they're these two items are kind of companion pieces to 5C, where we're moving things to a better home in our code.
Yeah, if you were to go look at 147.01, you would see 147.02, codified ordinances. Ben is correct. We've shifted it over, made it more coherent. Marty, you're good?
That covers it.
Gosh. Well, I guess I'll make a motion that we place on the agenda.
Don't do them both. Or should we do them
Probably ought to
in
have to do separately.
Okay.
Let me go with, let me make a motion that we authorize the changes to Chapter 145 as discussed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Very good, and I'll now make a motion that we'll move to the agenda, chapter 147, as discussed.
I'll second again.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do you want to?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend today's agenda to include the administrative department's collective bargaining with the fire and EMS.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So,
Motion carries.
before you speak, Patrick, there's a lot of work that goes into collective bargaining, and the administration has been working very hard, along with Gina, to make sure that we get the best program for all involved, for fire, for EMS, and for the city. And we're under a time constraint here, and I think Patrick will get into that. I believe our current contract ends at the end of this month. So we're going to need to move rather quickly in order to get this approved so that they're not operating with a contract that's expired or having to backdate something to make it effective. Both parties are in agreement on the terms, and I think Patrick's going to cover some of those.
Yes. Thank you, Dave. Just for the benefit of those that are new to the process, a few years ago, we embarked upon a different way of doing things as far as the negotiations go, and it's kind of really old school, back to the John Boyajian days, which is that the collective bargaining units meet with the Director of Administration, the Director of Finance, and we leave the lawyers out of it. And if we need an assist legally on a technical matter, we can go consult. But we have found that by keeping the attorneys out of the room, we've been able to get very constructive agreements. We've been able to improve the working relationship between all the departments and the administration. And so this will be, starting my second lap. We've done all of the other agreements, and now we're starting over with the next group of agreements. So, and you should know that every year there are agreements. We have 7 collective bargaining units. They generally all run on 3-year contracts, so we're doing, 2 of those a year on average, sometimes 3. So this contract didn't always expire on December 31st. But somewhere along the way in its history, it got off track. We would prefer it not to be at this time of the year. It's very, very difficult. But that's something that we're, as we work through these next cycles, we're going to try to adjust some of those dates. We just didn't feel that we had the time on this one. We opened up bargaining with notice to serve beginning of November, and we've met 4 times between then and today was our last meeting. And so the big one that everybody always wants to know first is, what's the wage effect? And we were able to agree to a 3-3-3 for a 3-year contract. So 3% a year, each year for 3 years. We should note that this is consistent with what we've done in the past. It's consistent with what we've done in all the other collective bargaining agreements. And we feel especially grateful that we were able to get this completed. As you all know, that there are inflationary pressures out there in the marketplace, and the longer they're in effect, the more bearing they bring upon the collective bargaining process. So we're pleased to get this completed with that. What were some of the other things? We were looking to increase the uniform allowance from $1,000 to $1,250. This is consistent with what we've done with the police, 3 contracts there as well. Most of the other stuff that we've done has been to clean up language. If Gina were here tonight, and she can certainly speak to it next week as well, that this is a unique bargaining unit. There are 40-hour employees, there are 53-hour employees, 53-hour employees covered by FLSA, 40-hour employees covered by something else. And when you're administering the back office, time off, personal day, vacation day, and how each entity has a different formula, it created a real burden upon the finance department to administer this contract. So our intent was to simplify this as we drove our way through this. And so as an example of that, using personal leave in quarter-hour increments rather than 4-hour increments. Now, that doesn't sound like something big, but really, when you think about the implications of it, it is. So you need 30 minutes off at the end of the day to go to a doctor's appointment. Previously, 4 hours. Had to take 4 hours. Well, that meant you have to bring somebody in for 4 hours on overtime. Well, now take 30 minutes. Maybe we don't have to cover that shift as a result. So we think that with some of this, there's some advantages to the employee that they don't have to take 4 hours. That's great because they didn't really need it. But then there's benefits to us and what it does in the back office. We made some clarifications in language. There were, for instance, there are provisions in the contracts that allow for sick leave payout upon retirement. It said after 10 years of employment. 10 years of what kind of employment? It's kind of implied that it's full-time employment. But this is a department that has a lot of part-time people. So we felt that it was important that we clarify that this is for 10 years of continuous full-time employment. Things like that, the details that we all went through, and Catherine, myself, and Gina were the three that really poured over that ahead of time to kind of fix some of these matters. Some things that you recall we had done in previous contracts with other bargaining units. We did the insurance committee, got that into the police contracts. Now this is into the fire and EMS contract, and these insurance committees have been working very well. They've been meeting on a regular basis, talking about issues. And one of the things that came of that this time around was the HSA option, health savings accounts, and a number of people, have jumped on that opportunity, but never would have existed if we didn't make that change with allowing for a health insurance committee. So that's included in this as well. So that's kind of the overall bigger ticket items that are worth mentioning. But yes, Mr. Revolt. No, go ahead.
I remember the Boyd and Whatever days long ago. And I'll ask Patrick to comment in a minute, but, I think what he's talking about is this, is we want to recognize, we're going to approve this contract, we have a partnership, and we have a responsibility to the taxpayers. But we also have a responsibility to our employees as well, to preserve a partnership. And if we have an adversarial relationship with our employees, we do not end up in a good place at the end of the day. So everything that Patrick and Catherine and Gina have done to foster this collaboration is absolutely the direction to go. We basically come full circle. It works. This worked before. I know we've been off the rails on it, but this works. I think the other thing that we want to add is Patrick has referenced this timekeeping and stuff. Is that Ben was instrumental in helping with some software, correct?
Yes. Yes, we're actually doing rollout this week for that.
So our clerk slash legislative affairs director slash software IT person is helping make this management possible, that 30-minute management.
Yes, because we're utilizing scheduling software that we as non-tech person didn't know we even already had, part of the Microsoft Office suite. Ben's very familiar with everything that offers. We already pay for it. It's, in essence, free. Demoed it to us. To me, was mind-altering. Demoed it to the battalion chief in the fire, and they're running full bore with it and love it. And it will allow them to do a better job a more efficient job of scheduling with more forward vision of where the openings are.
And I think, what strikes me about this is that many times when you buy software, you've got to get on the phone and you have to call Asia. You have technical questions. We've all experienced that frustration. Well, for our employees who are going to learn this system, they really only need to look as far as the council office for that technical assistance. And I think that's absolutely terrific. We've got somebody who can repeatedly guide people to come on. We don't have to worry about somebody falling apart. We hope, correct?
We hope, yes. Might be a little overselling my talent.
I understand it. But again, think about it. I mean, we're kind of in this new world here. We talked about it. And so here I've got our clerk, who on his own initiative goes to the administration and says, hey, I can really help you out here. Can I show you something? Whoa. And that gets us, that translates into that savings on those 4 hours of overtime that you're paying to somebody else. If somebody had some initiative. So, Patrick, just very quickly, would you talk about the collective bargaining process for our new members? If we don't have agreements, how does it get resolved?
Okay.
Just briefly explain that.
So let's say that there's a matter of an issue that's contentious, and management and labor just can't come to agreement on it. And generally those involve monetary things. So the best example to use is wages. So, we know where we want to come in at. They know where they want to come in at. And if they say, well, listen, we think that 5% is what we want. And so they come in at 5, and we say, well, that's ridiculous. We're going to come in we're coming in at 2. So now we're part, and through all the negotiation, we can't get closer than that. Then that will start a mediation process. And we will have picked from a list of mediators using the alternate strike method. And I can assure you that most of the mediators on the list are not ones that rule frequently in favor of municipalities, in favor of the employer. So ultimately, we get down to the final person who's going to be the mediator, and we're going to take our case to that person and make our case. And then labor is going to bring up all these other different municipalities from around Ohio and beyond that show comparable statistics to North Canton Police Department or the North Canton Fire Department or whatever department we're talking about. And they'll say, look, this is what they're getting everywhere else, and there's no reason why we can't. And then they'll say, oh, by the way, here's the public records request we made to the Director of Finance that shows that the city's in a healthy financial position. So our basis of our finances are disclosed. Imagine that in any private sector dealing, right? So we're at a disadvantage. So the mediator looks at it and says, well, geez, it looks like you guys can't plead the poorhouse. They're asking for 5, you're at 2. Seems to me 4 would be reasonable. So that's going to be my ruling 4. And then, yeah, there is a process that you can go through from there in appealing that to something higher up. But ultimately, when you lose it kind of at that first level, you're not going to get it turned around. So, it's important on things like, for instance, that you have this relationship with the people running these bargaining units. Because, it can get so adversarial so quick. It can be, we want to see the budget you're putting together. We want to see your drafts. We want to see how much you're putting in for general wage increases. Because once they have that information, they know that's your base. You're budgeted for that. How can you pay less than that? You were budgeted for that. So the process is stacked against you. So when you go in there and you're going to take the attitude that we're going to beat you up, it just sets everything back. And we went through this. Daryl mentioned to, when I came on council, they had an attorney that's all they did, was that kind of thing. And they hired him, and then, we were into the six figures. Over $100,000 to the attorney to negotiate the contract. We got 7 of them. This was one. Because it kept dragging on, and every point was fought. There was no agreement on anything because we were taking that contentious attitude. And then the costs got too much that it shifted in-house to the incumbent law director. And that didn't exactly work out very well either, because even if we were able to get to agreements, he also is supposed to represent these departments. So if there's an accident or if there's an incident involving a police officer, he's supposed to represent the police officer. Well, how comfortable do the police officers feel when he's in the other room beating you up on all the collective bargaining process? So it is inherently flawed, I think, those approaches, which gets us back to the way it was done and why it was done and how effectively that was done. So we haven't spent any money on attorneys' fees to get these things done, and we developed these good relationships that we're not fighting on every issue. And so it's very important that you understand that the process as it's written in Ohio law is stacked against you. So if you have bargaining units that are just dead set against you, you're not going to have a lot of success. So if during the course of working with them, they know that they're sitting across from me, Catherine, who affect their employment, and the finance director who talks about how much we can afford to do, that is far more effective than getting us to the finish line, and has shown to be the case. But I'm sorry, that was not quickly.
Thank you.
No, I think that's wonderful that we can get through this entire process without it being an adversarial relationship.
Absolutely.
When you think about it, it's the city and it's the city services, the fire, the EMS, and the police, that we're all here to support the citizens of North Canton. And if we can come to those agreements in an effective and efficient way, and it benefits all those, then it also benefits the citizens. So thank you to the administration for putting this together. I know we're coming down to the last possible moment for this, but it's a good agreement for everybody, and that's what's important here. So I would make a motion that we add this to the agenda for next Monday's meeting.
The vote will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, may I ask that you inquire for next Monday who may or may not be in attendance?
Yes. Is anybody not going to be here next Monday?
20th.
Okay, the 20th? So,
We need to do this on emergency.
yeah.
Yeah.
this would be
Okay.
emergency.
You did how many votes?
6.
6. Okay, anything else? Motion and a second to conclude the agenda.
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned. Yeah.
Did he? I don't know.